short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
Operation Epic Fury, now a stunning new chapter in U.S. intervention in the Middle East. Israel's forces joining U.S. troops on the front lines.
We will have to have resilience, and we have to have courage.
Critics calling it a war of choice as the White House demands Iran lay down its weapons or face certain death. Our breaking team coverage starts now. Atra El-Nashar with the president's mission to neutralize Iran's nuclear threat. But first, let's go to Mark Boyle with what we know thus far.
Certainly a fluid situation right now as the United States, along with Israel, are launching this massive military assault against Iran. This photograph right here posted of the president and his team as the assault began. Early Saturday morning, U.S. and Israeli forces began a series of strikes, some of the videos showing what it looked like, targeting Iranian supreme leaders' compounds, senior leaders, and facilities across the country. Now, Israel says it dropped munitions on about 500 targets in Iran, making this the largest military flyover in history for the Israeli Air Force. Now, leaders say this is just the first wave. President Trump posted a video acknowledging U.S. lives could be lost.
Even so, and I do not make this statement lightly, the Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission.
Now, we know one of the strikes was on the Supreme Leader's compound, keeping in mind he has been in power since the late 80s. Now, right now, a senior Israeli official is reporting the Supreme Leader is dead. Iran launching a series of strikes across the Middle East after this, targeting multiple U.S. bases. This is one example of a hotel and a high-rise being hit by some of those drones in the region right here. And this map gives you a better idea of some of those bases that are in the crosshair. And there are several dots of red throughout the area. It gives you an idea of what they're dealing with. Minimal damage reported from the hundreds of Iranian missiles and drones.
President Donald Trump ramped up renewed threats towards Iran in January when its government ordered a violent crackdown on a wave of protests. Trump now urging them to take over.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
Iranian leadership called them terrorists and rioters, resulting in an internet blackout that went on for nearly 3 weeks and mass executions. The U.S. estimates more than 7,000 people died. Global firepower ranks Iran as the world's 16th most powerful military and one of the top in the Middle East. The Revolutionary Guard has ballistic missiles, drones, and advanced naval capabilities. It boasts more than 600,000 active duty personnel. Those missiles have a range of roughly 1,200 miles.
They attempted to rebuild their nuclear program and to continue developing long-range missiles that can now threaten our very good friends and allies in Europe, our troops stationed overseas, and could soon reach the American homeland.
Former CIA analyst and national security expert Dr. Eric Cole joins us. Thank you so much for your time today. First of all, what opportunity do you think the U.S. saw to strike right now?
So I think what was happening is this week there were negotiations, and it was all about the enrichment of uranium. And essentially, the current administration is Iran has zero enrichment, like no tolerance. And Iran was like, that's a deal breaker. I mean, we are going to enrich uranium. So I believe they decided sometime Thursday, Friday, that, hey, this isn't going to work and we need alternative action. And then parallel, this has always been a big concern and threat to Israel. And Israel and the United States have been communicating. So to me, this war has been talked about probably for at least 6 months since we initially dropped the bombs on Iran. And the question was, when is the proper timing? But to me, this was inevitable.
Right. There was certainly a buildup, and we will wait to see how this joint operation, as you noted, plays out. I do want to talk about this operation in particular, though, because the U.S. broke their tradition of the cloak of darkness. Very unusual. Speak to us about why.
To me, I believe the big reason is safety of civilians, because we knew that when we went and attacked Iran, they were going to attack back. Like this was not going to be just like 6 or 7 months ago where we bombed them and they did nothing. There was going to be very quick retaliation, and for both the safety of Israelis and the U.S. bases, because Iran has already struck 7 U.S. bases in the region, if it's daylight and people are awake, you have a higher probability of getting them to safety, them being more aware of what's going on and what's happening. If we struck at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning and all of a sudden Iran started attacking the U.S. bases and Israel at 3 in the morning, that could have a higher casualty rate and a less rate of preparation.
Before I let you go, how long would it take to plan this level of a coordinated attack?
This is at least 6 months. Now, the most intense planning would have been in the last 2 to 3 months of just coordinating, because if you look at how precise the timing was between when the United States first missile and when Israel's, it was almost within seconds. So there was a lot of close coordination. And I would say over the last 2 weeks, we were probably talking with Israel almost 24/7 to make sure that this operation goes off as planned.
We appreciate your assessment, Dr. Eric Cole. Thank you for joining us on the National News Desk.
My pleasure.
Back in June, the U.S. and Israel launched military strikes on Iran just 8 months ago in a dramatic surprise attack to prevent the country from acquiring a nuclear weapon. It started with Israel bombing military and nuclear facilities June 13th. Iran retaliated, but the U.S. intercepted the attacks and bombed 3 nuclear sites. Iran then fired missiles at a U.S. base in Qatar. This brief conflict ended June 24th. The United States and Iran have a long, complicated history that evolved significantly around Iran's 1979 revolution. In 2002, former President George W. Bush labeled Iran as part of the axis of evil. Tensions flared in 2018 when President Trump abruptly pulled out of the deal and reinstated the sanctions. In 2020, the U.S. killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in a drone strike in Baghdad. Iranian forces immediately retaliating with strikes of their own against U.S. military bases in the Middle East. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports.
I'm Atra El-Nashar in Washington. It was Saturday at 2:30 a.m. here on the East Coast when President Trump from his Mar-a-Lago estate posted a video that will change the course of history, announcing Operation Epic Fury, a massive and ongoing joint mission with Israel against Iran. This map shows where Iran has been hit so far, and targets include a location associated with Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer.
In recent weeks, President Trump openly weighed military action as nascent nuclear talks with Iran, as recent as Thursday, didn't immediately yield a deal.
We will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties.
Smoke seen here in Bahrain, home to a U.S. Navy base. Here is where Iran is retaliating against Israel and U.S. military bases. The yellow countries contain sites that have been targeted. Red have been hit. Iran has been preparing for this, running provocative Navy drills with Russia, warning any attack would be met with greater force than what followed last summer's Operation Midnight Hammer strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities.
We learned lots of lessons from the previous war, and we will certainly teach the aggressors a lesson they deserve.
President Trump tells Iranian civilians to, for now, shelter in place.
It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take.
Back in the U.S., many members of Congress, mostly Democrats, demand clarity on the president's objectives.
This sounds an awful lot like it could be Iraq War 2.0. This is war. This is major. These are major combat operations. And under the Constitution, that means Congress must vote on whether or not we send American troops to war.
Republican leadership issuing statements of support. House Speaker Mike Johnson says today Iran is facing the severe consequences of its evil actions. Senate Majority Leader John Thune, I commend President Trump for taking action to thwart these threats. In some of America's biggest cities like Los Angeles, New York City, and here in D.C., police departments are increasing or preparing to increase officer presence at sensitive locations like government buildings and religious sites. In Washington, I'm Atra Eldashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
As the strikes continue across the Middle East, back here at home, federal and city leaders are on high alert for possible retaliation on U.S. soil. FBI Director Kash Patel posting a message saying while the military handles force protection overseas, the FBI remains at the forefront of making sure the attacks don't happen here at home. We're also hearing from the head of the DHS, Kristi Noem. She posted a message saying that the DHS, they're certainly aware of what's going on, and she's in direct coordination with federal intelligence and law enforcement partners as they closely monitor and thwart any potential threats to the homeland. Again, that's Kristi Noem. And as Atra just talked about, city leaders on high alert. These are the messages right here, NYPD and the Metro Police here in Washington, D.C., talking about how they are upping their patrols, dialed into what's going on and making sure the streets stay safe.
And our team of journalists will continue to stay on top of this rapidly developing story throughout the weekend. For the latest on Operation Epic Fury, just head on over to our website, thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. But before we go, a final word from President Trump.
May God bless the brave men and women of America's armed forces. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless you all.
Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. opening up to the National News Desk. Washington insider Armstrong Williams. Jan Jeffcoat spoke to Armstrong earlier this week about their candid one-on-one conversation.
I believe that I was born an addict, and I ran particularly in my mom's family, and that I'm biologically hardwired to drink and drug myself to death. And the only thing, and this has been shown again and again, that I can overcome that kind of biological drive is a spiritual fire. We should try to turn our lives into a prayer, so every day to stay in conscious contact with God. And I try to do that in my life.
Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. sitting down for a very candid interview with our very own Washington insider Armstrong Williams, where nothing was off limits. And Armstrong joins us right now to discuss this interview. Great interview, by the way. I thought the discussion about his years-long battle with overcoming drug addiction through faith was pivotal, because he said it is part of his daily discipline. It's part of him renewing his mind every single day. Armstrong, we've talked about this. Wisdom is the knowledge of God's will, and he said he would be dead without that spiritual anchor. What did you find most surprising about your discussion with him?
You know, I spoke with my sister who watched the interview, and she's in this line of work. She says the most difficult cases that she deals with every day. And what he said was, it's every day. You can have all the programs in the world. You can have all the counseling in the world, but in the end, faith and a deeper belief in God and that he can deliver you is exactly what helps people to overcome. And you never overcome, but you can survive it. And for the Secretary of HHS, Jan, to say that he struggles every day, he attends Alcoholics Anonymous every day, really put it in perspective. And it gave people permission that there's no shame in what you have to do to overcome addiction.
In fact, he said pain was the touchstone of spiritual growth and an opportunity for spiritual advancement, which I thought was very poignant, because, you know, he receives a lot of criticism, as we know. He receives all kind of calls to resign. And he says that's not only really made him stronger and kept him on mission, because, you know, he has this end goal, but he doesn't look at it in a negative light. He said that blocks him from his blessing when he gets offended, when he looks at things negatively, because it blocks God from doing all the things that he still needs him to do to accomplish as HHS Secretary. What did he say was some of the priorities that he still hasn't accomplished that he wants to in his position?
Healthy foods, toxins out of the environment, making sure that people can afford health care, and making sure that industry doesn't continue to exploit people by giving them cheap food where they pay the price in their health, their well-being, and ultimately they die from it. So, and you know, he's at peace with himself. And let me just say this. I always wanted to ask him about the criticisms from Carolina Kennedy and her daughter Tatiana, who died, and the kind of criticism that he receives. And I thought it was so profound that he saw it as a gift, as a blessing. Even the person who attacked him verbally in Nashville when he was working out, he said, wait a minute, to his security detail, let me listen at what this person has to say. Let me learn how I can be a better human being, a better servant, a better secretary. I mean, that was to me so profound and so enlightening. And it's a message for all of us, the humility in that, the forgiveness in that, and the willingness to lurk on yourself 24 hours and learn from others how you can work better on yourself. It's just a powerful reminder of what we struggle against. But if we remind ourselves, we can learn something even from the least among us that which we not always see. We can be better every day.
That's right.
Instagram says it will start alerting parents if their teenage children repeatedly look up topics related to suicide or self-harm. The new feature will only be available to parents enrolled in the app's parental supervision program. They'll get notified via email, text, or WhatsApp and on their own Instagram account. The photo and video sharing platform is also working on a similar feature if kids ask AI chatbots about suicide. This as countries around the world are moving to ban or limit social media for teens. Here in the U.S., the fight is landing in a Los Angeles courtroom where a landmark lawsuit claims platforms are hurting kids' mental health. The National News Desk, Angelo Brown, sat down with two sisters about the impact of social media.
I sat down with two sisters, Isabella, 19, and her younger sister, Juliana, 12. Their screen time on TikTok nearly identical.
I would say 4 to 5 hours per day. On busy days, maybe 3 hours. On non-busy days, it can get up to like 7 hours on TikTok.
7 hours, almost an entire school day spent on a screen. And Juliana knows the impact it can have.
It has an impact on your personality because it really, like, if you're spending this much time on TikTok, you're just seeing all of these other people and you're saying, why can't I be them? Why can't I look like them? Why can't I act like them?
Countries around the world are moving to restrict or ban teens from major social media platforms. Australia became the first country to ban social media for children under 16. And in the U.S., lawmakers are facing that question directly.
Is this coming to America's children, Senator?
It needs to, and I think when you look at what's happening right now with our kids, ages 13 to 17, they have said they actually feel more negative, feel more depressed. Almost 50% of them admit to that after being on social media.
And this issue is hitting a courtroom in Los Angeles where this week a landmark trial over alleged social media addiction and youth mental health impacts is unfolding. The question in that courtroom, the same question families are asking around the world, whether these platforms are actually hurting their kids.
People say comparison is the thief of joy, and I really think that comparing yourself to others online is just self-sabotage.
I mean, I definitely don't compare myself as much as I did to other people when I was her age. Let's say when I was going into high school, I feel like that was when I was on social media the most, but now at 19, I'm able to recognize that what I see online isn't necessarily true.
In Washington, D.C., I'm Angelo Brown.
Testimony continues in the trial of Corey Richins, who was accused of killing her husband in 2022. If convicted, Richins could face decades to life in prison on aggravated murder and related counts. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team. You have been looking into this case, but also, Emma, I know that this comes as the FBI just released a new report on an uptick in domestic violence. I know you dug into that. What did you find?
The biggest headline in the report was really that the domestic relationships, they make up a growing share of violent crime in the U.S. According to the FBI's new special report, which uses National Incident-Based Reporting System data, about 25.6% of all violent crimes involved a domestic relationship in 2020. And then by 2024, that number rose to 27.5%. So we're talking about more than a quarter of all reported violent crime having some type of domestic connection.
And which type of violent crimes show up the most in these types of cases?
Sounds like it's aggravated assault. So the report finds that 31% of aggravated assaults involved a domestic relationship, which is the highest share among the violent crime categories that they tracked. Robbery, by comparison, was a lot lower. We're talking about 6.5% involved in a domestic relationship.
All right, Emma, thank you. Later on, Emma will be back to dig into the role gender plays in the domestic dispute data. Coming up, a twisted scheme. Police say a D.C. woman faked her own kidnapping, how the alleged plot fell apart. National News Desk team of reporters is bringing the headlines from coast to coast. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington, D.C., where police say a group of women staged a kidnapping to try and extort a friend. Officials say the group tried to trick their friend into sending $500, and the alleged kidnapping victim was in on it. We're told the victim even received a photo of her friend tied up.
And at this point, we're just glad we were able to bring it to a safe conclusion. Details did involve a Cash App account. So at that point, if the money had been exchanged, then what will we be dealing with at this point?
The suspect now face an extortion charge that carries up to 20 years in prison. In Olympia, Washington, a bill that would tighten rules on crypto kiosks is headed for a House hearing as concerns over stealing from older adults increase. One woman says she was tricked out of $17,000 when scammers texted her multiple fake warrants and demanded she pay to avoid arrest.
I did not know that the police don't call you if you have a warrant for your arrest. I did not know that they do not ask for cash. So this was an evil underbelly of the world that I knew nothing about.
An FBI report from 2024 found the agency received over 11,000 complaints about the kiosks, with reported losses of nearly $250 million. According to the report, people 60 and older accounted for the majority of the losses. Coming up, a Supreme Court showdown over the U.S. Postal Service, the major ruling, and the fallout. Plus, new video shows the terrifying moment a sinkhole suddenly swallows 2 cars in Nebraska. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now, the body of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson will return to his birthplace. South Carolina's governor announcing Jackson's body will lie in state at the Capitol on Monday. Check out this video in Omaha, Nebraska. A sinkhole opens up directly below 2 vehicles as they were waiting at a stoplight. People nearby left their cars to help the drivers get out safely, while others helped direct traffic around the hole. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but can you imagine the experience of these drivers? The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has announced its nominees for 2026, and this year's list is the largest ever, with 17 artists. Among them, Lauryn Hill, Phil Collins, Shakira, and Luther Vandross. The only artist to make the list in their first year of eligibility is Pink. Those stories and more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. The Supreme Court rules Americans can't sue the U.S. Postal Service. This after hearing a case where a black Texas landlord claimed racial prejudice led to her mail being withheld for 2 years. She said 2 postal employees refused to deliver her mail because she was black and owned multiple properties. 5 conservative justices ruled that federal law shields USPS from lawsuits over mail. The Trump administration warned ruling in favor of the landlord could hurt the financially weak Postal Service. Coming up next, the topic of a surprise meeting between New York City Mayor Mamdani and President Trump at the White House. Plus,
I'm Christine Frizzau in Washington, where President Trump and his team are laser focused on the economy, their message, and how it's being countered, coming up.
You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. Catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
Clinton depositions. The Jeffrey Epstein investigation now making history as both Bill and Hillary Clinton make their case against him.
New FBI memos just released allege the Biden administration knew about the 2022 search at Mar-a-Lago. I'm Jeff Harris in Washington. Coming up, the accusations being made and how lawmakers are responding.
And then the FBI sounding the alarm on domestic violence, a troubling trend colliding with a case drawing national attention. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and newly released memos from the FBI appear to show that former President Joe Biden knew about the agency's search of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago property in 2022. As the National News Desk, Jeff Harris reports, it comes despite repeatedly denying having any advanced knowledge.
These memos appear to suggest that a then White House deputy counsel spoke with the FBI, Justice Department, and also the National Archives months before the search, with internal documents stating the search was dependent upon President Biden's brief decision and coordination with multiple agencies. Just the News recently obtaining these new memos, which appear to contradict previous claims from the Biden administration that it didn't have any prior knowledge about the Mar-a-Lago search.
The president was not briefed, was not aware of it. No one at the White House was given a heads up. No, that did not happen.
In August of 2022, the FBI executed an authorized search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, the residence of then former President Trump, as part of an investigation into the handling of classified documents. The following year, Trump was indicted on federal charges. One of the newly released memos reading in part, quote, "This event is dependent upon the timeline of President Biden's brief, decision, and coordination between White House counsel and DOJ." Here's then Attorney General Merrick Garland following the search.
There are, however, certain points I want you to know. First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly.
President Trump among the many now responding to these new memos, taking to Truth Social over the weekend, sharing a link to the original article. A member of the DOJ's Public Affairs Office sharing this quote from Attorney General Pam Bondi on X, saying, quote, "President Trump was targeted at every level by a corrupt system that thought to remove him from politics entirely." And House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, quote, "It's always worse than we thought. These newly released documents confirm that the Biden DOJ's raid on Mar-a-Lago was politically motivated from the very start." Now, according to Just the News, the memo showed then White House Deputy Counsel Jonathan Sue allegedly had conversations with the FBI, DOJ, and also National Archives as early as April. Those conversations reportedly taking place after the voluntary return of 15 boxes of classified materials. Now, former President Biden has not issued a public statement regarding these newly released FBI memos. Many Democratic leaders have also remained silent. However, historically, they have dismissed allegations of DOJ weaponization. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
FBI Director Kash Patel and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles' phone records were subpoenaed by the FBI in 2022 and 23. Fox News and Reuters confirmed the subpoenas were part of the federal investigation into President Trump's handling of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and efforts to overturn the 2020 election. During that time, Wiles and Patel were both private citizens. Patel told Fox News the move is outrageous, he says, and deeply alarming. Since the news, CNN reports Patel has fired at least 10 employees. Former President Bill Clinton is named in the Jeffrey Epstein files, but not accused of any wrongdoing. Friday's deposition sets a precedent for former presidents giving testimony to Congress. A former president can be compelled to give congressional testimony, apparently unrelated to the separation of powers. President Trump also is named in the Epstein files and not accused of wrongdoing. Clinton's deposition opens the door to Trump facing similar treatment down the line. The former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, also testified on Thursday on her ties with Epstein, which she said she never met Epstein. Larry Summers is resigning from teaching at Harvard University over his ties to Epstein. The former Harvard president and U.S. Treasury Secretary said in a statement that his decision to leave is difficult, but he's grateful for his time at the Ivy League school. He'll retire at the end of the academic year, but remain on leave until then. He was friends with a late convicted sex offender long after Epstein pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution. In the meantime, Bill Gates has apologized to his foundation for his past ties with Epstein. According to the Wall Street Journal, Gates held a town hall where he admitted he had 2 affairs with Russian women that Epstein later discovered, but Gates said the affairs didn't involve Epstein's victims. Gates said spending time with Epstein was, quote, a huge mistake, and he denied any wrongdoing in connection to Epstein. President Trump and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani met again at the White House on Thursday. Mamdani says the topic of the meeting was housing. He posted this photo to social media, you see it right here, where Trump is holding a fake Daily News edition reading, Trump to City, let's build. In a separate post, Mamdani said he also spoke to the president about a Columbia University student detained by ICE on allegations she overstayed her visa. He said Trump told him she would be released soon. Also, the issue of the economy front and center for President Donald Trump following Tuesday's State of the Union address. But will American voters have a change of heart before the midterm elections? That will largely depend on whose message wins out, as our national correspondent Christine Frizzell reports.
On the topic on the top of voters' minds, President Trump appeared to have gotten the message. It's the economy.
Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, the hottest. It's getting bigger and bigger and stronger. Nobody can believe what they're watching.
Many recent polls showing voters do not, in fact, believe the country is moving in the right direction where their wallets are concerned. For that, the president blamed Democrats.
They caused and created the increased prices that all of our citizens had to endure. You caused that problem. You caused that problem.
His administration out in full force, touting the lowering of prescription drug prices, tax cuts, and what's being called a new age of American prosperity.
Real wages are up, blue-collar wages are up, inflation is down, consumer confidence is up, job numbers in the private sector are up.
Where do you think the disconnect is? Because so many polls, and we're talking Democrats and Republicans, still feel that the economy is not where they want it to be, not where President Trump promised it would be.
What's happening is that people are seeing that they're getting raises, that their jobs are more secure, and that's lifting spirits quite a bit.
A decidedly different perspective from Democrats.
This was Donald Trump's state of delusion. He's in a bubble. He doesn't even know what the average American is going through.
He's enriching himself, his family, his friends. The scale of the corruption is unprecedented. There's the cover-up of the Epstein files, the crypto scams, cozying up to foreign princes for airplanes and billionaires for ballrooms.
Looking ahead, First Lady Melania Trump will chair a United Nations Security Council meeting next month in New York. The meeting is expected to focus on children, technology, and education. Her office says the goal of the session is to highlight the importance of education in advancing world peace and tolerance. This will mark the first time a sitting U.S. First Lady has ever presided over a Security Council meeting. President Trump is considering requirements for U.S. banks to verify citizenship for current and potential new customers, according to the Wall Street Journal. It could reportedly take shape through an executive order. Big banks worry paperwork required to comply would be overwhelming. They also worry that the aim is to recruit executives in the administration's immigration deportation efforts. The White House has yet to confirm or deny the report.
I never thought that he would even have a thought process of bringing a gun to school or doing any kind of harm to anybody else, let alone anybody at school.
The father of a Georgia school shooting took the stand in his own defense Friday. Colin Gray has pleaded not guilty to nearly 30 charges, including murder and manslaughter. Prosecutors argued Gray bought his then 14-year-old son an AR-15 style rifle as a Christmas gift and allowed him unsecured access despite warning signs the teen posed a danger. Gray said he purchased the rifle to get his son away from video games and introduce him to deer hunting. The case is part of a broader effort nationwide to hold parents criminally responsible in school shootings. Authorities say Colt Gray admitted to the 2024 high school shooting. 4 people died and several others were injured. The now 16-year-old has pleaded not guilty to 55 felony counts, including malice murder. His trial date has not been set. As the trial of Corey Richins, the woman accused of killing her husband, continues, the topic of domestic violence is top of mind, particularly since the FBI recently released new data showing an uptick in domestic violence as a whole. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the Fact Check team, and we never obviously want to hear that, Emma.
Yeah.
I know that you dug into a new FBI report digging into this. What does the latest data say about victims?
So the gender gap is pretty striking. That's definitely what stuck out to me. And the commonality of a case like what Corey Richins is accused of is pretty rare. So according to the FBI data, 74.5% of victims in domestic relationship violent crimes were female. Also, according to a report from the World Health Organization, nearly 1 in 3 women, that's estimated like 840 million women globally, have experienced partner or sexual violence during their lifetime.
Well, you mentioned this is a very specific case, but
yeah.
What else does the data say about this case, about other cases? What really stood out to you?
Yeah, so the FBI's data basically shows that domestic violence is not just a small slice of violent crime. It's actually a pretty significant and slightly growing share. And when it comes to murder specifically, the FBI report documents 11,466 domestic relationship murder victims between 2020 and 2024. Overall, during that 5-year period, there were more than 1.1 million victims of other domestic violent relationship crimes. So it seems to be a growing problem. It's tragic.
Emma, thank you.
Thanks.
And for more on that data that Emma just mentioned and more on this Fact Check Team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. Top NATO allies believe cyber attacks on hospitals and electric grids are tantamount to acts of war. According to a new Politico poll done in the U.S., Canada, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, a majority of people believe that's the case. Canadians felt the strongest about the issue. The number of attacks on the rise. In 2024, Russia-based hackers targeted U.S.-based Change Healthcare. Over 55,000 pounds of frozen blueberries are recalled because of potential listeria contamination. The FDA just upgraded an existing recall of Oregon potato company blueberries to Class 1. That means consuming the product could cause serious illness or death. They were not sold directly to people at retailers, but were distributed to Michigan, Oregon, Washington, and Canada. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the State of the Union to making America healthy again.
And welcome back to the National News Desk. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. President Trump's State of the Union speech is being seen as the opening arguments ahead of this year's midterm elections, with both parties using Trump's words and policies as a launching point for their efforts to control Congress. A pro-Republican group releasing a TV ad featuring one of the night's most viral moments.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. These people are crazy.
National correspondent Akra El-Nashar, you covered the State of the Union on Tuesday. What are folks saying, not just about that moment, but the battle lines that are being drawn in the wake of Trump's speech?
Well, Steve, in both the State of the Union and to an extent the Democratic rebuttal by Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, there was so much focus on questioning the other side's intentions and character. Policy, of course, played a big role. It was a 107-minute speech, but it's clear that in this midterm election year, it's going to be about questioning the other side's intentions, asking voters, do you think they're actually working for you, or are they in it for themselves? Are they corrupt, etc.? And in that moment that you played where President Trump told folks to stand up, it was very us versus them, right? He wasn't asking them about an actual policy. And it reminded me of that now infamous campaign ad from 2024, from the Trump campaign that said, Kamala is for they, them, President Trump is for you. Kind of a similar, again, us versus them messaging there. So here's what Democratic Congressman Paul Tonko of New York told us right after the State of the Union.
He sounded like a divider-in-chief. He did everything he could to divide throughout the speech.
Now, when it comes to the battle lines, Democrats are drawing and pulling from Trump's statements on Tuesday night. They're really looking at that moment where he called out the Supreme Court, which just struck down most of his tariffs. And he basically said, court be darned, I'm going to move ahead anyway. And of course, Democrats are pointing to tariffs as a big reason why they argue the president has not followed through on his promise to make life more affordable.
National correspondent Atra Elnishar, thank you. Meanwhile, the Make America Healthy Again movement has launched some controversial debates about the Trump administration's federal health policies. But national correspondent Christine Frisau, one effort that is receiving almost universal praise is its push to scrutinize the chemicals used in ultra-processed foods. Tell us about that.
Yeah, let's take a step back for a second, Steve, and just think about this country and how prevalent ultra-processed foods are. They're found in every grocery store, on every shelf, even in a lot of schools. So unlike, for example, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s policy on vaccines, weeding out ultra-processed foods is something that has a lot of people on board. So I've been speaking a lot to FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary about this. He actually calls their prevalence an epidemic. He says they are directly responsible for chronic diseases, including for likely a really big increase in diabetes. So he says this is going to be a big priority for the administration, really trying to get them out of our diets.
Some of these chemicals, like BHT, we're going to be taking a close look at. That's on a cereal box. You'll see BHT, you'll see BHA. Azodicarbonamide is used to make the sort of bubbles in yoga mats and in sneakers. And somebody thought, hey, we can put this in dough and make it, rise more. These are chemicals where people have had serious health concerns. We want the consumers to be educated about them.
Yeah, and that is going to take time, and it's also going to take some buy-in from some of these mega food companies who have added these ingredients years ago to try to make food more affordable, just adding these kind of chemicals in. But he is very concerned at how unhealthy they're making Americans, and it seems like a lot of that this isn't really a political issue. A lot of people are on board with this.
Christine, Atra, excellent reporting as always. Thank you both for your hard work. Back to you.
Coming up next here, the controversial nurse who was fired after a viral video targeted Caroline Levitt, the new action she's taking to make an income. Reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America. And we start in Florida, where a nurse is defending her viral video targeting Caroline Levitt.
I hope that you rip from bow to stern.
The graphic video that cost Alexis Lexi Lawler her job as a Boca Raton labor and delivery nurse.
And never normally again, you
is now at the center of a court fight. Lawler is asking Florida's 1st District Court of Appeal to overturn the emergency suspension of her nursing license, or at least scale it back so she can work in non-patient-facing roles.
I'm on the right side of this. You.
The off-duty comments directed at White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt quickly went viral. Lawler was fired by Baptist Health Boca Raton Regional Hospital in January, and the next day the state stepped in, calling her an immediate serious danger.
These people should not have a license.
But in court filings obtained by CBS 12 News, Lawler argues the emergency standard was never met. No patient harm, no clinical misconduct, no prior discipline in 12 years as a nurse.
It's an issue affecting New Yorkers across the state. Sky-high energy bills. Whether you're a homeowner or business owner, you're feeling the pain.
I've turned down the heat in my house to 64 degrees.
Last August, the State Public Service Commission approved a statewide rate hike for National Grid. Now, state Republicans are proposing the Lights On with Energy Relief program, gathering in Albany today to announce a plan they claim will provide $2 billion in relief.
Still ahead, aging doesn't have to mean forgetting. Why some people stay mentally fierce well past 80. Spirit Airlines, once at risk of shutting down, has reached a deal to stay in business. The budget carrier said it has reached an agreement with creditors to exit bankruptcy later this spring or early summer. The airline has filed for bankruptcy twice and struggled with losses since the pandemic reshaped travel demand. Under the deal, Spirit remains independent but much smaller. A new warning about Social Security: the program's main trust fund could soon run out. The checks won't stop, but your benefits could shrink. The National News Desk, Angelo Brown explains how much of a decrease we're talking about.
If you're retired or getting close to retirement, this headline may feel like a gut punch. The main trust fund for Social Security is facing depletion in 2032, but it doesn't mean the money is running out. The trust fund is like the program's backup cash reserve.
And then at that point, the Social Security Administration no longer has a trust fund to draw down, and they can only pay out what they bring in taxes.
And what they bring in taxes may not cover 100% of a person's Social Security.
Social Security itself isn't going away, but it's going to be a very different, either increased taxes or decreased benefits or some combination.
According to a Fox News report, if Congress does nothing, people on Social Security could lose about 7% of their check in 2032 and then see much bigger cuts, about 28% every year for the next 4 years. No matter what Congress does, someone will feel it.
If I raise the retirement age, that's clearly affecting people who are getting close to retirement. If I raise taxes or change the tax system, right, lift the cap, that's affecting somebody right now with a higher tax rate. If I change indexing to inflation, it's going to affect people's benefits.
There are a number of bills moving through Congress right now, Social Security related. The only problem is it appears that none of them are close to being passed. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angelo Brown.
A new study reveals a possible reason so-called super-agers stay mentally sharp after turning 80. It shows such people produce twice as many young neurons as normal, cognitively healthy adults. Those neurons are well equipped to grow and wire themselves into a person's brain. The study also shows a difference in the part of the brain responsible for memory. In super-agers, it better supports young neurons. The study is out in the journal Nature. NASA is adding a new step to its historic moon landing mission. The space agency announced there will be an additional crewed test flight before attempting to land on the moon. Artemis 3 was the mission previously used to refer to a moon landing. However, NASA said that would now be a different mission entirely.
We're essentially going to pull in Artemis 3 to launch in 2027 with a revised mission profile. So instead of going directly to a lunar landing, we will endeavor to rendezvous in low Earth orbit with one or both of our lunar landers.
The space agency hopes Artemis 3 will get off the ground next year. The moon landing mission will now be referred to as Artemis 4. It is slated for 2028. Astronomers say they may have solved one of Saturn's greatest mysteries: how Saturn's largest moon came to be. The massive, mysterious moon is named Titan. After analyzing data from various sources, researchers believe about 500 million years ago, a lost moon collided with Titan and became one. The theory will be tested using NASA's Dragonfly, a nuclear-powered car-sized rotorcraft. And that'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Just check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week. We hope to see you on Monday.